I thought the flowers were kindness. Then I found the photos hidden in my basement. My neighbor knew everything before I did. Now someone is watching my house at night, and I don't know who to trust anymore. My name is Rachel Torres, and I'm a dental hygienist in Portland. I've always been the person everyone depends on. Reliable, steady, boring. That all changed the day my neighbor handed me roses and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The flowers on my doorstep, I pulled into my driveway after a long Tuesday shift, my back aching from leaning over patients all day. The Portland rain had finally stopped, leaving everything wet and glistening under the streetlights. That's when I saw them. A bouquet of red roses sitting on my porch steps, wrapped in clear plastic with water droplets still clinging to the petals. My heart did a little skip. James must have left them for me. Maybe he was finally making an effort again, trying to fix whatever had been broken between us these past few months. I grabbed my purse and the flowers, inhaling their sweet scent as I fumbled for my keys. But then I saw Derek standing in his front yard across the street. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there with his hands in his pockets, watching me. Our eyes met, and something about his expression made me freeze. It wasn't the friendly neighbor look I was used to. It was sad. Deeply, painfully sad. He crossed the street slowly, and I noticed he was still in his work clothes, khakis and a button-down shirt. His hands stayed in his pockets as he stopped at the edge of my driveway. "Those are from me," he said quietly. I left them. I looked down at the roses in my arms, confused. "Oh, that's really sweet, Derek, but why?" "You deserve better than this, Rachel." His voice was firm, but gentle, like he was telling me something important that I needed to hear. "You deserve so much better." I stood there with my mouth half open, not knowing what to say. Better than what? Better than flowers? Better than my marriage? What did he even mean? "I don't understand," I finally managed. Derek looked at my house, then back at me. "I know, but you will." He turned and walked back across the street without another word, disappearing into his house and closing the door behind him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to James in our bed, listening to him snore softly, and stared at the ceiling. The roses sat in a vase on the kitchen counter downstairs. And Derek's words played over and over in my mind. "You deserve better than this." Why did he look so sad for me? What did he know that I didn't? The first crack in my perfect life. James came home at almost 11 o'clock the next night. I was already in my pajamas, sitting on the couch with a cup of tea, pretending to watch television, but actually just waiting. When he walked through the door, I smelled it immediately. Perfume. Sweet and floral, nothing like the simple lotion I wore. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Long day?" "Yeah?" He didn't look at me, just dropped his briefcase by the door and headed toward the kitchen. "I need a beer." I followed him, my heart starting to pound. "How was work? Did you get that Johnson account finished?" He spun around so fast I actually stepped back. "Can you not interrogate me the second I walk in the door? I'm exhausted, Rachel. I just need 5 minutes of peace." I felt like he'd slapped me. James never talked to me like that. Never. In 7 years together, he'd always been patient, kind, almost too gentle. This angry stranger in my kitchen wasn't the man I married. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I was just asking." He grabbed a beer from the fridge and walked past me without another word, going upstairs to the bedroom. I stood alone in the kitchen, my hands shaking. The next morning, I noticed his phone sitting face down on the bathroom counter. It used to be that we knew each other's passwords, that we'd grab each other's phones without thinking, but sometime in the last few months, James had changed his. When I asked him about it, he said it was for work security. I'd believed him then. Now I wasn't so sure. I got ready for work in silence while James showered. When I left the house, Derek was getting his newspaper from the end of his driveway. He waved at me with that same sad expression, and I felt my face burn with embarrassment. Did he hear us fighting? Did he know James had yelled at me? As I drove to the dental office, I couldn't stop wondering what Derek knew. Had he seen something? Heard something? Why else would he bring me flowers and tell me I deserved better? I started thinking about all the late nights James had been working. The new cologne he'd started wearing. The way he'd pull away when I tried to kiss him. All the little signs I'd been ignoring because I didn't want to see them. By the time I got to work, I felt sick. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe I did deserve better than this. My sister's unexpected visit, Lauren, showed up on Thursday afternoon while I was folding laundry. I heard the doorbell and opened it to find my younger sister standing there with 2 expensive Louis Vuitton suitcases and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Surprise, she said, throwing her arms around me. I hope you don't mind. I left Marcus and I need a place to crash for a few days. My sister had always been dramatic, beautiful, charming, and completely unpredictable. Where I was the steady, responsible one, Lauren was the wild child who dated musicians and traveled to Europe on a whim. Mom always said we were complete opposites. Of course, I said, even though something felt off. Come in. I'm sorry about Marcus. She dragged her suitcases inside like she owned the place. Where should I put these? Guest room upstairs? I followed her, watching as she navigated straight to the guest room without me telling her where it was. She'd only been to this house once before, right after James and I bought it 2 years ago. How did she remember the layout so well? Make yourself at home, I said slowly. That evening, James came home early for once. When he saw Lauren sitting at our kitchen table drinking wine, his face went pale. Lauren, he said, his voice tight, what are you doing here? Hey, James, she raised her glass to him. Long time no see. They barely looked at each other during dinner. When they did, it was quick glances that felt charged with something I couldn't name. I tried to fill the silence with cheerful chatter about work and the weather, but it felt forced and awkward. After dinner, I went upstairs to shower and get ready for bed. I was brushing my teeth when I heard voices downstairs. Low, urgent whispers. I turned off the water and crept to the top of the stairs. Can't be here right now, James was saying. Where else am I supposed to go? Lauren's voice was sharp. You said... I know what I said, but this is complicated. Complicated? You mean because she might find out? I felt my stomach drop. Find out what? I stood there frozen, listening to them argue in harsh whispers until they finally went quiet. When I came back downstairs, they were sitting in separate rooms, both staring at their phones. That night, I lay awake again, this time wondering what my husband and my sister were hiding from me. The photos I wasn't supposed to find a Saturday morning. I decided to get the Christmas decorations out of the basement early. I like to start planning for the holidays, and it gave me something to do besides obsess over the weird tension in my house. The basement was cool and dusty, lit by a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. I pulled boxes off the metal shelves, checking labels, when I noticed a cardboard box I didn't recognize. It was plain brown, no label, sitting behind the artificial Christmas tree. Something made me pull it down and open it. Inside were photographs. Hundreds of them, some printed, some still on their photo paper. I picked up the first one and felt the world tilt sideways. It was James and Lauren. They were sitting at a restaurant, holding hands across the table, looking at each other the way lovers do. And James was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months, years maybe. I grabbed another photo. They were at the beach, Lauren in a bikini with James's arm around her waist. Another one showed them in a hotel room, kissing. Another at a concert. Another at a park. My hands shook as I checked the dates printed on the backs. 2 years ago, 18 months ago, right before my wedding. During my honeymoon when James said he had to leave early for work. Last Christmas when he said he was visiting his parents. I sank down onto the cold basement floor. Photos scattered around me like evidence of a crime I'd been too stupid to see. My own sister had been sleeping with my husband for at least 2 years, maybe longer. I thought about every family dinner, every holiday, every time she'd hugged me and told me how lucky I was to have James. She'd been lying to my face the entire time. Derek's words came back to me like a punch to the gut. You deserve better than this. He'd known. Somehow my neighbor had known what was happening in my own house while I'd been completely blind to it. I sat there on that basement floor and cried until I couldn't breathe, surrounded by proof that my marriage and my family were both lies. When your neighbor knows too much, I waited until Lauren left for her yoga class on Sunday morning before I marched across the street to Derek's house. I didn't care that I was still in sweatpants and hadn't brushed my hair. I needed answers. Derek answered on the second knock. He took one look at my face and stepped aside. Come in, he said quietly. His living room was neat and masculine. Leather furniture, dark wood, everything in its place. He offered me coffee, but I shook my head. I couldn't drink anything right now without throwing up. You knew, I said, my voice shaking. You knew what they were doing. Derek sat down heavily in his armchair and nodded. I'm sorry, Rachel. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I didn't know how. I didn't know if you'd believe me. How long have you known? About 4 months. He ran a hand through his hair. I started noticing Lauren's car in your driveway every Tuesday, always when you were at work. Then I saw them one day coming out of your house together. They were laughing, touching each other. It was obvious. I felt tears burning my eyes again. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. That's why I brought you the flowers. I wanted to give you a hint. Make you start questioning things. He stood up and walked to his laptop, sitting on the coffee table. But then I realized you needed proof. Come here. He pulled up security camera footage from his garage. The camera faced my driveway, and I watched as Lauren's silver Honda pulled in. The timestamp said Tuesday, 3 weeks ago. I watched myself leave for work, and 10 minutes later, Lauren got out of her car and went inside my house with her own key. An hour later, James's car pulled into the garage. She has a key, I whispered. Derek clicked through more footage. Weeks of Tuesdays. The same pattern over and over. Lauren arriving, James coming home early, both of them in my house while I was cleaning teeth and making small talk with patients, completely oblivious. I have months of footage, Derek said softly. I saved all of it for you, in case you needed evidence for a divorce. I looked at him then, really looked at him. He was probably in his late 30s, nice-looking in a quiet way, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Why would you do all this for me? Because nobody helped my sister when her husband was cheating on her. She figured it out too late after he'd hidden all their money. I watched her lose everything. His jaw tightened. I couldn't stay silent anymore. You deserve better than this, Rachel. You deserve the truth. I sat there in Derek's living room, watching video after video of my husband and my sister betraying me in my own home, and I realized my neighbor had shown me more loyalty than my own family. The confrontation that changed everything. I waited until Lauren went shopping on Monday afternoon. I'd spent the whole night planning what I'd say, how I'd stay calm and controlled, but when James came home from work and found me sitting in the living room with the box of photos on my lap, all my planning evaporated. We need to talk, I said. He saw the photos and froze. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Then he slowly set down his briefcase. Rachel, don't. I stood up, my whole body shaking. Don't you dare try to explain this away. I found these in the basement. 2 years, James. 2 years you've been sleeping with my sister. He didn't even try to deny it. He just stood there looking caught and slightly annoyed. Like I'd found out about something inconvenient rather than devastating. It's not what you think, he finally said. I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Really? Because what I think is that you've been having an affair with Lauren since before we got married. What I think is that you're both disgusting liars. Lauren understands me. His voice was cold, matter of fact. She gets who I am. You're too good, Rachel, too perfect. Everything has to be just right with you. The right job, the right house, the right life. Lauren doesn't judge me. I felt like he'd punched me in the stomach. Get out, pack your things, and get out of my house. No. He crossed his arms. This house is half mine. We bought it together. You can't just kick me out. Watch me. And where is Lauren supposed to go? He actually had the nerve to look defensive. She left Marcus for me. She has nowhere else to live. The words hung in the air like poison. She left Marcus for me. My sister had destroyed her own relationship to be with my husband, and James was defending her right to stay in my house. You're serious? I whispered. You actually think you're going to keep living here with both of us? I'm not leaving my own house. James picked up his briefcase and headed for the stairs. You'll have to figure out how to deal with it. I stood there alone in the living room, realizing that my husband wasn't sorry. He was just annoyed that he'd been caught. And he had no intention of making this easy for me. That's when I knew this wouldn't be a simple divorce. This was war. My sister's twisted confession. Lauren came home 3 hours later with shopping bags from Nordstrom, Sephora, and Coach. I watched her walk through the door with hundreds of dollars worth of merchandise, and something inside me snapped. Did you use my credit card? I asked, blocking her path to the stairs. She smiled. That same fake smile she'd been giving me my whole life. James said I could. Since I'm staying here, he thought, James doesn't get to make that decision. I grabbed one of the bags and looked inside. A leather purse, $300. You need to return all of this. Lauren set down her bag slowly. You know? Of course I know. I found the photos. I've seen the security footage. I know you've been sleeping with my husband for years. My voice was rising, but I didn't care. How could you do this to me? I'm your sister, she laughed. Actually laughed, throwing her head back like I'd just told the funniest joke. Oh, Rachel, you really have no idea, do you? No idea about what? About how much I've always hated you. Her face changed, all pretense dropping away. Perfect Rachel. Mom's favorite, the responsible one, the good daughter. Do you know what it's like growing up in your shadow, always being compared to you? I stared at her, speechless. I seduced James at your engagement party just to prove I could. Lauren stepped closer, her eyes gleaming. He was your fiancé, so devoted, so in love. And it took me exactly 20 minutes to get him alone in the coat room. That's how much your perfect love was worth. I felt sick. You're lying. Am I? She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo, James and Lauren kissing in a dimly lit room, her engagement ring visible on her hand, the date stamp showing 2 days before my wedding. I wanted to take something from you, Rachel. Your perfect little life. And I did. But why? I was crying now. What did I ever do to you? You were born first. You were better at school. You were Mom's favorite. Lauren's voice was bitter and ugly. I've spent my whole life being the screw-up while you got all the praise. Well, now I have your husband, and there's nothing you can do about it. I realized then that my sister hadn't just betrayed me. She'd been planning this revenge for years, nursing her jealousy until it turned into something twisted and cruel. She didn't love James. She just wanted to destroy me, and she'd succeeded. The watcher in the dark. I told them both to leave, but neither of them would go. James claimed squatters' rights, and Lauren said she had nowhere else to stay. So we lived in this horrible limbo, me sleeping in the guest room, them sharing what used to be my marital bed. That's when the strange things started happening. The first night, someone rang my doorbell at 2 a.m. I rushed downstairs in my pajamas, but when I opened the door, no one was there. Just darkness and the sound of footsteps running away. It happened again the next night, and the night after that. Then I found my car in the morning with all 4 tires slashed. The mechanic said it looked like someone had done it with a kitchen knife, just sawing away at the rubber in the middle of the night. Do you have any enemies? The mechanic asked me. I looked back at my house, where Lauren was watching from the upstairs window. Yeah, I do. The mailbox was worse. I opened it to get the mail and found it stuffed with dead roses, dried, black, crumbling petals mixed with torn photos of James and me on our wedding day. Someone had cut my face out of every single picture. I called Derek, and he came right over with his laptop. We watched his security footage from the past week, and there it was, a figure in a dark hoodie standing across from my house at 2 a.m., watching my bedroom window, then running up to ring the doorbell and running away. Can you see who it is? I asked. Derek zoomed in, but the hoodie covered their face completely. The figure was average height, slim build. It could have been James. It could have been Lauren. It could have been someone else entirely. I'm scared, I admitted. I don't feel safe in my own house. You can stay with me, Derek offered. I have a guest room. You can stay as long as you need. I looked at his kind face and felt torn. Was Derek really just a concerned neighbor? Or was there something else going on? But then I looked back at my house, where my sister and my husband were living together, and I knew I couldn't stay there another night. Okay, I said. Thank you. Derek's dark secret. I moved a few things into Derek's guest room that night. He was a perfect gentleman, gave me space, made me dinner, never asked prying questions. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The next afternoon, Derek had to run to the store. I was looking for a blanket in his garage when I found the old newspapers. They were stacked in a box, all from 3 years ago, and they all featured the same story. Local woman missing after husband's affair discovered. Sarah Chen, 34, missing for 2 weeks. Search continues for missing Portland woman. I pulled out the papers with shaking hands. The woman in the photos looked exactly like me. Same brown hair, same build, same age. According to the articles, Sarah Chen had discovered her husband was having an affair with her cousin. 2 weeks later, she disappeared. Her body was never found. Her husband and cousin both had alibis. The case went cold. I looked at the address listed as Sarah's last known residence. It was this house, Derek's house. My heart was pounding as I heard his car pull into the driveway. I shoved the newspapers back into the box and went inside, trying to act normal. Find everything okay? Derek asked, carrying in groceries. Yeah, fine. I watched him put away milk and bread, this man who'd seemed so kind and helpful. Derek, can I ask you something? Did you know the previous owner of this house? He froze for just a second. Why do you ask? Just curious. I bought it from the bank after a foreclosure. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't answer. That night, I lay awake in Derek's guest room, wondering if I'd escaped one nightmare only to walk into another. Was Derek obsessed with saving me because he'd failed to save Sarah? Or had he done something to Sarah? I realized I didn't know if I was safer with my betrayers or with my savior, and I didn't know who was really watching my house at night. The revenge I didn't plan. The next morning, I snuck back to my house while James and Lauren were at work. I needed to gather more of my things, and I needed to access our financial records. Derek's concern about Sarah Chen had scared me, but it had also reminded me of something important. I needed to protect myself legally and financially. I logged into our joint bank account and felt my blood run cold. Over the past 6 months, James had transferred almost $30,000 into a separate account I didn't have access to. The transactions were labeled business expenses, but I knew better now. He'd been planning to leave me. He'd been stealing our money, bit by bit, setting himself up for a new life with Lauren. I printed everything, every bank statement, every suspicious transaction. Then I went through James's home office and found more. Credit card statements for hotels and restaurants I'd never been to. Receipts for jewelry I'd never received. Text messages he'd printed out and hidden, showing him and Lauren planning their future together while I paid the mortgage. But the worst part was the emails. James had been in contact with a divorce lawyer for 3 months, asking about how to minimize what he'd have to pay me in a settlement. He'd been planning to blindside me with divorce papers while hiding as many assets as possible. I took pictures of everything with my phone. Then I gathered every piece of evidence from the basement, the photos, the receipts, everything. I added Derek's security camera footage showing Lauren entering my house with her own key while I was at work. I sent all of it to my own lawyer. Then I sent copies to James's boss and HR department because his company had a strict ethics policy about workplace conduct, and he'd been using company time and resources to carry on his affair. I sent copies to Lauren's employer at the marketing firm, where she'd been using her work credit card for personal expenses with James. I sent copies to our parents, to our friends, to everyone who needed to know what they'd done. The consequences came fast. James's company suspended him pending an investigation. Lauren's employer fired her immediately for credit card fraud. Our mother called me crying, then called Lauren and disowned her. James's parents threatened to sue him for embarrassing the family name. My lawyer filed for divorce and got an emergency order giving me sole possession of the house. The judge looked at the evidence of James hiding money and awarded me everything: the house, the car, the savings he'd tried to steal. James had to move out within 48 hours. Lauren called me screaming, saying I'd ruined her life. I hung up on her. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in my living room now, legally mine, when Derek knocked on the door. I'd moved back home after James left, and I hadn't talked to Derek since discovering those newspapers. Can I explain? He asked when I opened the door. I let him in, but I stayed near the door. Sarah was my sister, Derek said quietly. My little sister. When she found out about her husband's affair, she fell apart. I tried to help her, but I was living in Seattle. By the time I got here, she was gone. His voice broke. They never found her body. Her husband and cousins swore they didn't know anything, but I know they did something to her. So you bought her house? I couldn't let it go to strangers, and I thought maybe I could find some clue, some evidence. I never did. He looked at me with those sad eyes. When you moved in across the street, you looked so much like her. And then I saw what was happening to you. The same betrayal, the same affair. I couldn't let history repeat itself. I had to help you this time. I realized Derek wasn't a threat. He was just a broken man trying to save me because he couldn't save his sister. It was obsessive, maybe even unhealthy, but it had saved my life. Thank you, I said finally, for helping me see the truth. Derek nodded and left. I watched him cross the street to Sarah's house, his house now, and I thought about betrayal and revenge and the strange ways our lives intersect. I kept the house, my job, and my dignity. James lost his promotion and half his retirement in the settlement. Lauren lost her job, her reputation, and her relationship with our family. They moved to a cheap apartment together. And last I heard, they were already fighting constantly. I learned that revenge doesn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes it's just telling the truth and letting the consequences unfold naturally. Sometimes justice comes from simply refusing to be silent anymore. And sometimes the person who saves you is the one you least expect. A quiet neighbor with sad eyes who knew what it felt like to lose someone to betrayal and couldn't bear to watch it happen again. I still see Derek sometimes, watching from across the street. But now I understand. He's not watching me. He's watching over me. And somehow that makes all the difference.